think they still happen. I just think that maybe we've just become desensitized to a lot of the things. I think since a lot of the things we see as either A, common, or B, just like by chance, like that was, oh, you're lucky. We say that a lot. You're a lucky individual because this and this happened. And I don't think when it comes to God, I'm sure that when it comes to God, there is no luck. Everything is either happens because A, he permitted it, or that's how he wanted it to happen. So I think sometimes because of that, we miss out on a lot of miracles. Yes, I've witnessed a miracle. And I think for me, it's a personal thing. It's in my own home. I see my son day to day. And, me and my wife experienced the miracle firsthand. He was 26 weeks when he was born, 3 months premature. And according to stats and everything and all the facts that we received from the doctors, he wasn't supposed to either A, make it, or B, have serious complications with like lungs, respiratory, and cognitive. And so I can go miracle after miracle. In fact, we started a miracle book with my wife. And I think we are up to like 25 things that are just out of the norm, out of the common, that happened throughout his stay at the NICU that we can testify were miracles, things that we experienced firsthand.
It was a moment, let me tell you. So we grab our sandwiches, we sit down around the table. There's 6 of us, high school girls, and there's 4 high school guys. And so we're sitting right at the front doors of this little school. Amazing place. The principal's office is right ahead of us, and then the main doors. And as we're sitting down, it's 12:05. I have like my pop there on the counter, and I have my tomatoes. I'm about to put on my sandwich. It was Wednesday. It was cold lunch day. I remember that. And I'm wearing this button-up shirt, and I was sitting looking at my food, and just like that, somebody caught my eye. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see out the doorway a girl named Olivia, and she was a middle schooler, and she sprinted from the door like something was coming. And right about that time, we heard this grinding metal sound, like someone hit a trash can, like a dumpster, a really big metal-on-metal grinding sound. And we all just kind of perked up, looked around, and we're like, what is this? And it was like 12:05 on the clock. I basically remember the moment. And just like that, the lights went out. And it was like a Call of Duty moment, like a bomb went off. The wall ripped around. We could see the fire alarm that had been on the wall opposite us. I mean, we're sitting at this table, the doors, and the wall rips around. And my chair takes off across that carpeted floor. And I had one thought in all that chaos. I mean, there's stuff just like drywall dust is blowing in behind us. And it's like, there's a chair in front of you. You need to jump that chair when this stops. And there was just a glint. And I wouldn't by no means call myself coordinated. But that chair slid right up to that one, and that is where it stopped, and I jumped. From there, over to the chair, and I ran out to the church foyer, because there was a church attached to it, a little sanctuary spot where we worshiped and where another church met. And so I get to the foyer, and I turn around, because I think, wait, there are people back there. And as soon as I turn around, all my classmates, my sister Shelly, my friend Sandy, Charla, Lisa, Rachel, Hannah, all of us girls who'd been at that table come running out of the building, and they are covered in drywall dust. And so I had to know what it was, so inquisitive. And I ran around the corner, turned in, and as I looked in at the school building, I saw a frac tank sticking out of our building. So we were in an oil field patch in North Dakota. That's where I went to school. And on the drill sites, they had to have a lot of water. So they kept it in these big storage containers called frac tanks. And when they hauled them, they always had a little peak on them in front of the semi, or behind the semi, excuse me. And one of those guys had been coming through the intersection just down from our school. And a woman had turned out in front of him. She hadn't seen him. And he had been speeding a little bit, and his cruise control had been set. And so she comes around the corner, he clips her car, and it just sends him reeling. He goes to the left a little bit, and his cruise control malfunctions, and he starts accelerating. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible deal. He ramps this small hill. We're talking a very large semi here. I mean, and he'd hit this car, and it was horrible, but the woman passed away at the intersection. She'd actually just been giving a Bible study in a town called Newtown. She was on her way back. She lived in Dickinson. An absolutely wonderful woman. And her family is just amazing. And so that was how the accident started. It was a a T-bone in the intersection, like not even a mile from our school. And this guy clips up the hill, plows through a little chain link fence I think we had up there, and he hits my friend Hannah's pickup, spirals it right into the principal's office. That's what peeled the wall back. And the wall peeling back, it like pushed us all aside, and that semi ran at 80 miles an hour through our building. And the only reason it stopped was because its oil pan got ripped off on our little tiny cement steps. Out front, there's a little landing pad. It caught on the corner, peeled it off, and the engine seized up partway through the bathrooms. And it just stopped. Otherwise, it would have kept rolling through our school, which is out in the middle of the country, in the prairie, in these fields, and it would have kept going through the fields, just hopping stuff. It's different when you know you've been spared, and when you have a group of people that have lived a miracle with you. I mean, there is no way any of those women at that table should be alive today, and they are. I mean, you cannot forget. If you have lived a miracle, you cannot forget that. You cannot unsee that. And people are like, I don't believe in a God that I can't see. And you're like, I can't say that. In America, we don't talk about miracle stories a lot. I think sometimes the circumstances don't allow for these big, elaborate savings. But here, in the middle of nowhere, a little school, we were spared.
We have an uncle named Uncle Charlie, and he was in Oklahoma, and he passed away probably about 4 years ago now. And my wife was really, really close to him. And he was in Oklahoma. He lives in Oklahoma his whole life. And he basically was in the hospital. He went to the hospital because he had drank too much alcohol and had gotten cirrhosis and had a really bad episode, and his liver was basically shutting down, I think. And we were praying, like we were at Butler Creek at the time, at Lifestyle Center, and me and my wife and a few of the other students we're really good friends with, we were praying with them, you know, every day about him and that he would be okay, you know, and if he's not meant to, you know, if he's not able to come out of it, that, you know, God would work regardless and that he'd be right, you know, at peace with God. And so we were praying for that, and then it came, I think we did that for about 5 days or so, and then it came time for us to go with our dad. He was going to Oklahoma to go visit him and go see him at the hospital. And so we picked a ride with him, went to Oklahoma, went to the hospital and everything, and then saw him, and then went back to the house, and the house that he had been staying at, his room. And I think we were organizing his belongings, and my wife found one book by his bedside, and it was a great controversy. And I was like, and it was the only book that was next to his bed. And he's never, I mean, we're Adventists, but no other part of the family is Adventist. He's never had any contact with Adventists as far as we know. From what we could tell, it was a book that he had sent in for to get sent to him. It still had the mail-in slip in there, and we still have that book. But my wife and I were just crying at that moment. We were like, man, like, God was already working even before we started praying about it, you know, and seeing God's hand, and that was just, it made me realize how small we are. You know, how we sometimes as human beings we limit God based off of what we're able to do or what we perceive, you know, with our senses, and sometimes God just has to remind us that he's so much bigger than what we can perceive.
In high school, I remember being afraid of Muslims. And the reason for that was that I had never known one. I had known them primarily through accounts of terrorism and the negative opinions that people around me had of them. And even in the times where I would go in and go on Google and type in something, the results that I wanted to read and that I was drawn to served my existing knowledge of that entire massive people group. And I didn't realize until later that this is happening with my own church, that there are people looking for information on who Seventh-day Adventists are, and they're coming up with scary results. They're coming up with problematic people. They're coming up with all kinds of things that will shape their view in a way that will not lend itself to getting to know the human beings within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so I had to do this really hard thing where I set aside my judgment of that people group, and I went out and found people. I went out and found relationships. I went and followed things written by them, things made by them, things that were intentionally for their own community and faith. And I wish that more people now would do that with Adventists. And I think that the responsibility can be on the individual to go find that information, but it can also be on us as a people to share ourselves. We have to be open to people looking at us. We have to be open to people being curious and asking hard questions and even challenging us. I now at this point in life, I crave that conversation and discussion. I crave people saying like, why do you believe this? This is weird. Like, what are the sources that you're using? How do you form your worldview? What are your experiences? Because in that dynamic, there is a relationship. And in relationship, it's very difficult to demonize any group of people. So what I hope that we're doing is creating an avenue for that. It's just saying, hey, we're as normal and weird and problematic as any other group of people, but here's a look at our lives. Here's a look at the people, this grandmother or grandfather. Here's the look at somebody who will pay for your groceries when you're short on cash. I mean, here's the person who will stop and help you if you're broken down on the side of the road, and you may never even know that they were Adventist. But because I see that, and I see them, and I want other people to see them too.